Good evening. Welcome to our full council meeting on Wednesday, the 16th of November 2022. I'm going to run through the emergency information. There are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. I would also like to advise both members of the public and press this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they're being used for the meeting. Please only speak when I ask you to do so and speak clearly into the microphones in front. Thank you. Apologies. I have received apologies from Councillor Ian Dorr. Is there any other apologies? Yes, Councillor Robertson.
Apologies from Councillor Susie Ellis.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, Councillor Redrup has messaged me to say he will be here, but he's running late.
Okay, thank you. That's all for the apologies. We will now move on to the agenda. Start with the minutes of the last meeting for the extraordinary full council on the 5th of October. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Can we agree by affirmation? Is there someone to propose those minutes? Councillor Madden, yep. Could I have a seconder for the minutes? That's a picture. And does everybody agree with those minutes? Is that by affirmation? Yep. Anybody who does not agree with them? Okay, thank you. Those are carried. I will sign those minutes. Thank you, Mary. Okay. So, item 2, declarations of interest. Is there anyone who would like to declare an interest? Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Just for sake of continuity, just register the same declaration of interest as I did last month with on the motion on Cllr Quigley that I'm an employer on the island where it relates to the living wage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Declarations of interest? And we have the note from the monitoring officer about the dispensation for the island plan, etc. as before. Item 3, onto the public questions. I don't think we've had any written questions submitted, but we've got public questions, oral questions, and I have a few here. So we've got 15 minutes for questions. First question is from Cameron Palin. Would you like to say your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for the leader in regards to the floating bridge. Whilst as an East Cowes Town Councillor and resident of East Cowes, I am slightly disappointed that the figure has been concealed from the public. Can the leader confirm this is due to third-party insurers of the commercial contractors, and that this administration would not have done this if they didn't feel this was the only way to get a considerable financial contribution?
Yes, is the short answer to that. Did you have a supplementary?
Supplementary, if I may. Can the leader please provide examples of when she made the council and the public aware of the process of the floating bridge since the administration took over, and provide a commitment to continue in dialogue with the council, but also town and parish councils that are affected by this?
Okay, can I just confirm that the noise in the chamber is not a mobile phone, it is a diabetic alarm, an alert. I know there's a number of diabetics here, so please can we be mindful of that? Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Halen, for your question. As you and others may know, in the interest of good democratic process on many decisions, the Alliance has reduced the number of delegated decisions down considerably to what they once were. Even so, we still have a few delegated decisions that are made, like when we need to respond to government quickly and when emergency funding becomes available. Regarding the floating bridge, I gave permission for a staff member, actually he's a director, to start and get on with the mediation process, as the floating bridge is actually part of his job. It's actually his job to solve. Between the Cabinet member, Councillor Phil Jordan, and myself, with the help of staff, we've given updates almost monthly to the Council and the press about mediation. Sorry to be rather particular, and I hope you'll all bear with me, but after signing the decision at the end of February, on Thursday, the 10th of March, just 2 weeks later, Councillor Jordan announced, despite rumours in the press about mediation in relation to the floating bridge, mediation is continuing to happen. On the 12th of April, Councillor Jordan gave an update on the floating bridge, stating mediation is continued, and this is to avoid costly and lengthy court action. Councillor Mosdale, where are you? Oh, there you are. I'd like to thank you, Councillor Mosdale. On the 18th of May at full council, you rightly raised a question about the floating bridge, to which I replied that I was continuing to force mediation, and I mean force mediation to bring it to a conclusion. I asked if Councillor Jordan would like to add to what I'd said in my response. A point of order was raised. There was quite a kerfuffle, but followed by the monitoring officer advice that I could, after giving a short message, hand over to the council, to the cabinet member responsible, and that he could speak. However, Councillor Mosdale said she was satisfied with my response, and she had no wish to hear Councillor Jordan's detailed response, which actually was, but you know, but yeah. So that was that. On the 14th of June at scrutiny, another update was given about mediation. That was that mediation was still ongoing. If I recall, this was not helped by various people within the process all going on holidays at different times. And I think that was why we had a bit of a delay. Councillor Ward, yep, you're there, okay. On the 20th of July at full council, once again, Councillor Ward quite rightly asked if there was any news, because I'm actually, as the past cabinet member, I'm sure he was very interested in the issue and the resolution. Again, we said as soon as we could make an announcement, we would be forthcoming with that. There were no meetings in August. In September, another meeting, it was noted that work to conclude the contract dispute over mediation continues, but we are awaiting settlement. On the 11th of October at scrutiny, the progress report to be included in the work plan. On the 8th of November, which just happened to be a full moon, was also scrutiny meeting, reported once again that mediation agreement for the contract dispute finally and successfully concluded. I also note that to add to the above, QPMR audits reports have regular updates about the floating bridge in them. To be honest, Cam, I wake up every morning, that's if I even slept at night, trying to find new ways to do the best for the residents. And whilst NDAs leave a very bad taste in your mouth, they were used by the previous administration on commercially sensitive information. In this instance, given a choice between picking a deal or no deal, I put my trust in the officers to do the right thing. I still have trust in those officers, and whilst it will never be the perfect solution, we have delivered one that is better for the island than was hoped. And it means we can move on to more pressing matters. Through officers and Alliance colleagues, I still pledge to deliver the best for this island, for my people, for our people, even if it makes me unpopular with the opposition colleagues. I look forward to taking them up on their offer to work together to navigate what the government has told us will be probably 2 of the most very difficult years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, I have Lynn Blackledge.
What value does the council put on a levy payer's life who became so stressed? This is a white bid levy payer's life, who became so stressed with life, explaining, sorry, let's start again. What value does the council put on a levy payer's life who became so stressed with life and was that he explained when summoned that he was unable to pay his rent, unable to pay, if he couldn't pay his rent, then he couldn't have his accommodation because it went together. And he had to explain in a non-private room his situation. So to explain in a non-private room his situation, he explained that he couldn't pay, and he was likely to lose his home. He lives above his business, and his only option, he felt at one point his only option was suicide. I would like to think that the case was dismissed. Sadly, it was adjourned, which brings into question the mental health of the person himself. It wasn't an option for Visit Isle of Wight to dismiss it because they would have to pay costs if it was dismissed. Subsequently, it was dismissed, but I'm wondering if due diligence was done in putting forward Visit Isle of Wight, especially without any tender process.
Thank you, Lynn. Councillor Jones-Evans, were you able to give a reply to that?
Well, it's actually quite a personal situation, which I don't think it's the right forum to go into, given the circumstances. And this is to do with Visit Isle of Wight, the destination marketing board for the island. And I think Mr. Blackledge is referring to one of the levy payers. I have talked to the Chief Executive at Visit Isle of Wight, and I will if it's okay with you, Chair, given it was I did have a written question from Mrs. Blackledge. It came in late, so I have got some more details, and I will respond in a written format. I think that's more appropriate in the circumstances, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Okay, so that'll be a written response to
Mrs.
Blackledge. Thank you. Was there a supplementary question at all, Lynn? Counting in what respect? For here or? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it was received late for this. Yes. So yeah. Okay, it wouldn't be able to be brought up in this meeting, but Councillor Jones-Evans will reply to you in writing. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson?
Chairman, with your indulgence, could I just say that this should be a warning, a lesson to all services. That's council, police, health services. As you know, I'm health scrutiny. I'm forever picking up health services on the insensitivity of the way that they deal with potentially vulnerable people. I can't say that enough. This is yet another example, and there are countless others where people have actually committed suicide because of the insensitivity in which they're being dealt with.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I may. That's John.
Councillor
You
Jones,
haven't got the full facts in this situation, so I think it's unhelpful in this situation. If I may say so.
A general point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I think, yes, we should all be as sensitive as we can in certain situations. So I take that on board. And Councillor Jones-Evans will do a written reply to the question. Thank you. Moving on to question 3. That's Stephen J. Parks. Do you have a question? Are you here? Hello, Stephen. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Can I first ask, Chairman, how much time is left, please?
2.5 minutes.
The reason I'm asking politely, the first question, with the very greatest of respect, we were told that they were verbal questions, and Councillor P.C. Wilcox seemed to be reading from a pre-prepared script, and I'm not convinced, was it directly answering the specific question, public question? It was taking up a lot of time. So now at the back end, I haven't got much time for you to answer.
I think maybe if you ask your question, we can move on. Thank
Right,
you.
okay, I'm just making a polite
I
point.
think Councillor P.C. Wilcox was being prepared. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is about transport, travel and access to and from the island, and the question's probably to addressed to Councillor Phil Jordan. Where are we at the moment, kindly? The ferries seem in a mess. Everything seems in a bit of a mess. And how can we move forward? Are we making progress to the future expansion, both commercially, socially, traffic, more traffic and visitors when our roads infrastructure is already at capacity in the peak summer season? I just wondered if we could have a brief outline where we are now. Are we making progress, and where does Councillor Jordan see the future leading with that?
Thank you. Councillor Jordan, could you give the question a response, please?
Thank you, Chair. We're making progress. It's very slow. We're trying to deal. I'm not sure if I understood entirely the question, so I'll endeavour to answer the parts of it that I do understand, which was the ferry companies and the cross Solent travel. And I continue to work with a number of people, including Lord Berkeley in the House of Lords and Nick Finney, where we are pressing forward for some sort of regulation of the ferries, not a public service order, but potentially regulation under the Office of Road and Rail. So our work behind the scenes, if you want to call it that, is to encourage government to consider regulating the ferries under the ORR. We're making some progress on that.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. I think our time is up for public questions, so I think we can't listen to any more.
Thank you.
So moving on, item 4 is the Chairman's official announcements, but I want to start by apologising to Cllr Shand. I meant to mention her at the beginning that Cllr is standing in for Wendy until she is able to join us. So thank you for being here, Cllr, this evening. Okay, so my report, I will start with the Remembrance Service. That was this weekend. It was an honour as Chair of the Isle of Wight Council to lead the civic party to the War Memorial at St Thomas's Square for the Remembrance Day service. to lay a wreath to remember all those who've lost their lives in conflict was a very moving experience. Thank you to the Minster team for asking me to give the Bible reading as part of the outdoor service they gave. It was wonderful to see so many youth organisations attending and the representation from the armed forces, including the veterans, as well as many members of the public. Thank you to all those involved in the planning and organising of a very fitting tribute to everyone affected by war and conflict. It is important to remember all those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, as well as wish for a more peaceful world for all. And I'm sure you all attended local services as well. So thank you for doing that in your local areas. In this last month, I have also attended and represented the Isle of Wight Council at the following events and functions: the Isle of Wight Legal Service, the Winter is Coming event, Civic Heads Dinner at Portsmouth Council, citizenship ceremonies, the RNLI, AGM, the Isle of Wight Council Job Fair, Harp on White Festival, RNLI fundraiser, the Field of Remembrance ceremony, girl guiding visits to the council chamber and unit meetings for Parliament Week. And the civic team and myself are planning for a visit from Coburg dignitaries in May next year to celebrate the 40th year anniversary of the twinning of the Isle of Wight and Coburg. So I look forward to be able to give you more details of that in the new year. And I'd also like to mention that the Vice Chair attended today the police name change, the official launch of it's now being called the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, and that is 50 years on since the Isle of Wight was taken off of that. So it's going to be brilliant to see our name on everything and make sure the Isle of Wight is recognised in that throughout the whole of the Hampshire area. They'll be able to see our name. So I think that's something to celebrate. Thank you very much. And I will go on to the next item. Yeah, I know. All right. Item 5. Just doing my sheets of paper. So item 5, the appointment of the Chief Executive. So this is a report from the leader, and I take it. I hand it over to you, Laura. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the report is with you. If we could not mention the candidate by name, I've just been told we're still not allowed to mention the candidate by name until after the vote. You have got it all in your packs. So, but I've just been told that which was lucky I asked, because I probably would have put my foot in it. Okay, so it was quite unprecedented, actually. We had 21 extremely good, I think you would agree, applicants that applied for the post. Of that, we had to whittle it down to around 8 to make it manageable for us to be able to interview in a good and fair way. I have to give absolute sincere thanks to the entire employment team who worked out videos, who got web pages up together. I think because of all of that, and we did choose, if you remember, at the appointments, not to go out with an external people, which saved us around 18,000, 20,000, I don't know, quite a lot of money, because we decided to do it in-house. And it proves that we can do this in-house and have that success. I hope actually some of those 21 applicants would come back and do other jobs, actually, because there were some good candidates. I'd also like to thank Jo Robertson, who is my vice chair on the council, Chris Quirk, who stepped in for Susie Ellis at the last minute and done a superb job, and Councillor Paul Brodie, who was very thorough in his paperwork and his synopsis, Councillor Ian Stevens and Councillor Jonathan Bacon. So it was a 50-50 split. I'd also, it was a very long 2 days. Can I thank all of those stakeholders that did the interviews the day before? It was very interesting and sometimes amusing reading the feedback forms that people wrote. But it did help. I chose to read the feedback forms after I'd interviewed, so that I wasn't swayed by by what was on the stakeholders. That was how I chose to do it. I'd like to ask Councillor Robinson if he would like to say anything on this before I go to the recommendation, because he is my vice chair. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Leader. No, nothing in particular other than to say by the sheer volume of applicants, clearly the way it was advertised was done very, very well. I think it was very encouraging to see the number of applicants, and as you say, of high quality applicants. From what I could see of the process, I was involved in the interviewing stage, the sifting and the interviewing stage. It was a very open process between those on the panel. It was a good example of councillors from across the chamber working well.
Is there anyone else from the committee that would like to speak? No? Okay, so we have a recommendation, and that is that the recommendation of appointment and employment committee be approved. So I think you're all rather aware of who that candidate is, but we can't mention it until after the vote. Yeah. So is there a seconder for that? Councillor John Nicholson. That was quick. That was really quick. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. The chairman's job to say that.
Do you have a seconder? Was that you, Councillor Nicholson? Thank you. So that is seconded. Do we all agree with that? Would those who are in favour of the appointment raise your hands, please? Okay, and those that vote against? And those that would like to abstain? One abstention. One against and one abstention. I don't know what that equals with all the people missing, so, but I think that vote is carried. So I don't, and my maths isn't great, but I'm going with that's carried. So I think we have, yes, we have to wait until that person has been notified and then they, yes, formally accepts it, which can be done quickly, but I'm not sure how quickly. So it depends. So I think we just have to wait at this stage and wait for Councillor Redrup to come in and say, it's not Councillor Redrup. I'm pretty sure I can say that. So it's your timing is impeccable, I believe. So. I believe we confirm that vote result and say that it is passed, and we move on to the next item, and then we can always come back to the result at another point.
Chair, I'm sat here muttering to Ian Ward and he's muttering back, but we're finding this whole process very strange from what's happened in the past. I've sat in on quite a number of chief executive appointments. In fact, I chaired the last one, and I am absolutely clear that after the person had been approved, the person was named. What's the secret about it? Presumably the person.
I don't think there is, Councillor Brodie. I think this is just the process that I've been told to follow. So that is what I'm doing.
Chair, I don't just accept. Apparently there is a reason. I'd like to know what the reason is, because
I believe they have to formally accept it. They've accepted the post in principle, but now they have to have been told that it's. Oh, Jeff, you've just got to have the last word, haven't you?
Get the woman in and let us start.
Well, she's not available to be here right now, so I think it was up to her. That's why we were just being sensitive, but maybe, you know, okay. Moving on to item 6, the nominations and appointments to committees and the Cllr board. Over to the monitoring officer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Following the resignation of Councillor Hastings' vacancy as a licensing committee for seats to be Conservative group, I understand that Councillor Ian Ward is comfortable with that and take that seat on the licensing committee. There's also a vacancy as a result of Hastings previously being vice chair of the licensing committee, and at the moment I have a nomination from the Conservative group, vice chair to Councillor Gary Peace, to indicate are there any other nominations for licensing committee? So the Appendix 1 in front of members already lists the points in terms of Sacre, the new appointments are listed there, and effectively understand the change in substitute in relation to the Alliance Group is that on deletion substitute Councillor Downer, other than that, subject to the amendments mentioned this evening in terms of the licensing committee and Councillor Gary Peace to serve as vice chair licensing committee, then the motion to be by a member and seconded this evening is I would suggest that the set out in Appendix 1 as amended this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Could we add on that Councillor Lilley would like to go as a sub planning? We took one off, right? I didn't.
Certainly, that's a matter for the Alliance Group. Maximum substitutes planning committee. I understand that as the papers stand at the moment, there's only one substitute plus the substitute
added to that. Councillor Churchman.
Yes, on page 30 and 31, Councillor Hastings hasn't been removed from two separate committees. I know he's there as a substitute, but it may be that as a Conservative group, other people in his out though, Hastings is still.
Would that be?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Obviously, that's due to the side. So. Substitutes can be put. And I would mention, just for completeness, that likely in January this year we'll take place. So I would therefore hand back to you, Chairman. That's as listed in the appendix amended this evening, including
So can we vote on that as a whole proposal? Yeah. So can we propose a proposal? Councillor Andre, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fuller. Thank you. So those that would like to vote for those changes.
With your permission, Chair, can I make a brief
comment? Certainly.
For those that don't know, the Sacre Committee is the Standing Advisory Committee. And as the Chair, I'm absolutely delighted that we have these new members. And I would just like to highlight that out of all the Sacres in the country, we are one of the most diverse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. So those that agree with those nominations, raise your hand. Any against? Brodie against, and any abstentions? Votes carried. Thank you. The Nicholson?
Jim, am I the only council necessarily? Why can't it go back to the leader just being with the group leader? So damn simple.
I will ask the monitoring officer because I don't know, because I wasn't here when it's done before.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor. I'd love to say yes, because it would make my life a lot easier. But unfortunately, various High Court cases up and down the long-standing, which actually require Council to rationale being is that the appointment of members to is something which is so important that it's dealt with by Council. Unfortunately, cannot be dealt with delegated. I'd love that to be the case because it's isn't the case. So, and to report members to Council, I think in January, reasons why actively promoted the substitutes possible, so that sort of deputy cannot. That doesn't apply to all by law. Certain things. Just a quick example: the licensing committee. By law, the statutory licensing committee. Then maximum can't be altered. That's why. Short answer: I'd love that to be the case, Councillor Nicholson. Take my life.
Sounds like we're stuck with it. So that vote was carried, and move on to item 7. It's the leaders' report. So, you, Councillor. Okay, so here we are. Week 77 of the Alliance. Group of 17, very much individuals, who are held together in their belief to do the very best for their island residents. As I say at most meetings, some of us have lost family, some have difficult situations. Please, could you refrain from personal attacks? One knows truly what is going on in each of our lives. Again, I say this at every full council. My sincere and heartfelt thanks to my cabinet, the staff at all levels and departments of this council, our amazing town and parish councils across the island, our extremely amazing voluntary sector for their unstinting support, our NHS, police, fire, prison, supermarket admin staff, and all of those who offer to work and support our administration. All of you keep our island going. Wish you all good health and our sincere thanks and support. Since writing my report, I've signed a delegated decision. It'll be coming to scrutiny apparently from now on. Since my report going out, you will be aware that we have agreed at Cabinet to approve the freehold of the KMP for use as a film studio. I'm absolutely delighted, surprised that I was delighted about this very good decision. And as we now have really pressing matters coming up about the cost of emergency, I mentioned earlier about the next 2 years are going to be probably the worst for this country seen for many years. It requires our full and total engagement across the chamber for the next few items. So one for hopefully that we can work for the good of our island residents. So I'll end the there. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Leader. You mentioned then about the good news about the film studio, and just want to sort of apologise to everybody about having to keep it so quiet, but it was extremely commercially sensitive. But now, obviously, we can talk about it and share the good news. Leader, would you be able to give us a bit more detail about what this actually means to the island and our economy, please?
Yeah, as you say, it was quite commercially sensitive. Many of us didn't really know too much of the detail of what was going on. I was pleased yesterday, I think, and reassured to meet two of the people involved. They are, I mean, high level. I mean, serious. These are. I mean, the stars and the people that they're working with off this scale. I mean, top level people. What was heartening was one of them that had moved to the island, I think in house, and he was just, as he went around the island, he kept thinking, military road for a big, thing, and then you've got the box, and then you've got beaches, and you've got a prehistoric, forest, and he just kept thinking, this is the real good location. Of course, and we know that there are film people already working on the island doing that. What they don't have is when there's downtime, weather or anything else, a studio. So it was a no-brainer to think about opening up and doing this. And their passion and their commitment is absolutely unprecedented. And I really hope this comes across. I know a number of my residents, their children went off to learn makeup, artist makeup on the mainland. They got degree, they got the top marks of their whole thing. It means that that particular child could come back to the island, be with a family, but actually be in that studio doing that. I've got people that have always wanted to do hairdressing in that field. It opens up that opportunity. It opens up the opportunity to have people bring food and stuff and beverage and that type of thing down there. The construction industry, maintenance industry. I mean, it really could be something quite incredible for the Isle of Wight, and I just hope that it actually does come off, because I was certainly very impressed, and I think, as I say, felt relieved when I met them and spoke with them that the level these guys are working at is just absolutely incredible. Tom Cruise, forward to that. And working with all the Star Wars people, I mean, it's just, they've got a real thing behind them. So in order for our island, for the economic recovery, I know we wanted, it was talked about that it should be green use. No, the sensitivities in the area. Is Councillor Stephen Hendry here? Yeah. Oh, Steve. It actually falls into Councillor Hendry's ward, and I know that you're very supportive of it. Subject to a couple of bits, but I just think it's really good for the island as a whole. So yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. We do agree this actually is mission possible.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, one thing contained in your report that I would like to highlight, unfortunately you concentrated very important matters, but I do have mentioned live this evening, is the situation in Ventnor with the sea wall. I would like, as part of my question to you, to underline that the damage there is significant and the danger is significant. As I said at Cabinet, stay away from that area, even after warning. Happened. High-vis jackets under working there. There's a complete void. And I'd hope Leedy would join in underlining that message. I would like to say that we knew something was going to happen there and works are planned, but that is now being brought. So the question is, would you join me in thanking staff for the work they're doing and managing a very difficult situation and working 24/7 to deal with it. And also to thank the Environment Agency for the support they're giving to the island. I mentioned works already. They're committing £50 million Ventnor to do works, but also they have undertaken to underwrite the costs of works that in the interim go towards that stage. So I'd say I'd like you to consider joining me in thanking the staff of the Environment Agency, particularly identifying, I think, 3 staff have worked with others, not directly, but Colin Brolin, Natasha Dixon.
Yeah, I would like to. In fact, you sort of stole my thunder there a bit, going on so long. But to be, you know, this happened. We mobilised people so quickly. I mean, it frightened us out because I didn't think anything would work that quick at the council. But we did mobilise very quickly down there. You are right. We've put barriers out. People are removing the barriers to run down there. I mean, you couldn't make it up. I was concerned, as you know, about the skate park that's down there put in. As you know, I always say children on this Isle of Wight are our future, and we need to look after them and we need to help and support them. I can't, you know, they're going to be the ones looking after us in a few years. We've got to be thinking about them all the time. So I did get in touch with this John Kettle and his wife to see what they could do about relocating that. I don't want to lose that. Comes under who's Gary's ward. So I don't want to lose that facility, Councillor Peace. So if there's anything that we conduits in making sure that can be maybe relocated in another, I don't want that equipment. And I couldn't agree more. We were very, very lucky. Don't know anything that the Environment Agency happened to be on the island and whisked them down there really quickly. As I say, I've never known us to work so fast, but we certainly did on that. And I would agree with those people that you congratulated and thanked, because they really do a superb job. And please, to the public, we don't put Harris fencing around to stop you for no reason. And when you see people in jackets, it's to keep a warning to keep you away. So that's what it's for. Thank you.
Bring Councillor Peace in, as it's about your ward.
Yeah. I'd just like to echo everything you said. I was down there today and was actually shocked and very pleasantly surprised to see going on. I didn't expect it. That art and that area is vital. Dog walking. So it's really, really impressive to see just how council and all the parties concerned should be congratulated.
The next question is Cllr Quigley.
In your report, it mentions, third paragraph, the £3,000 grants to help organisations in advance of mine. How do organisations?
I believe that's through Councillor Debbie Andre's organisation. Elaborate, Councillor Andre?
Yes, very happy to give the details of that. It comes through the Household Support Fund, Connect for Communities. So there is a dedicated Connect for Communities website, Connect for as in the number communities. Go on to that. There is a very straightforward application form that you can fill in. And please do, everyone, spread the word. Really do want to get this funding out there to make as maximum an impact as we can.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Was it appropriate to delegate the decision to settle the floating bridge mediation to a councillor who was in the cabinet that ordered the defective vessel?
Chair, point of order. I was not in the cabinet when the floating bridge and involved with that. In fact, this is in 2 reports. This is a matter of fact. 2 reports, both independent, that stated Councillor Robertson. You know because you've seen them. Why you raise this again constantly, I have no idea. That no councillor was involved with the procurement and commission of floating bridge. No, 2 independent reports. Can we please have that recorded as a matter of fact so that this is not repeated time and time again? This is a matter of fact. Thank you, Chair.
My supplementary
No,
question.
there isn't supplementary.
Could the leader perhaps confirm it's a matter of fact that political oversight was a problem as confirmed by the PricewaterhouseCoopers report into the floating bridge? Political oversight means those that serve in the cabinet.
There's no supplementary questions. Would Councillor Spink like to ask a question?
Leader, with regard to the Kingston Marine, that might be, I simply don't know, the best thing that could possibly happen to the Isle of Wight. But thus far, I can't really comment on it because I don't know much of the detail. Now that the cabinet decision has been taken, and I'm grateful that Councillor Jones says that
important decisions are made, then there needs to be reassurance to the public. Now, in relation to the specific matter about the details being not released during the public meeting, Councillor Spink is right to a certain extent, except that further on in the 2012 regulations, Regulation 20 specifically says nothing in these regulations authorize or require the disclosure to the public of exempt information. So that there is absolute safeguard there in terms of any premature release of information to the public which would damage the public interest. And obviously there is a difference between the public interest and matters which are of interest to the public. In terms of ensuring the probity of decisions to give the public the reassurance, then again in those 2012 regulations, there are specific powers for members of corporate scrutiny committee, this council for example, to formally request the release of exempt information under Regulation 17 if such matters are A, on the work programme of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, or B, being scrutinised at the present time by that particular committee. So I want to make absolutely clear to councillors this evening and to the wider public that Parliament has enacted legislation to ensure proper scrutiny can take place of information where information remains exempt at a point in time. So that is the explanation, and thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Chris Potter. I think that's the 15 minutes question time up for item 7. So we can move on to item 8. So that's the island planning strategy. I believe we're going to start off where we left off last time when we discussed this. So Cllr Jarman, would you like to lead? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At our last meeting, we had a motion before us, which was duly seconded, which was to refer the DIPS back to Cabinet. And that motion, having been duly seconded, unfortunately could not be dealt with at that meeting as the meeting was called off. We have had some movement of that since, including discussion with the planning staff on Monday, and they've been seeking for additional information regarding those referral conditions. As a result of that, members were invited to submit additional reasons to bolster that. I'm very pleased to say that from across the floor, a substantial number of reasons were put forward, and we've spent the last 2 days putting those into some order. There were many duplications within that. As a result of that, we have an amendment to that motion, and I'd ask Simon now to distribute that. It has already been distributed electronically over the last 2 days as it's developed, and there's been very little fine tuning of it today. It has been reviewed, I know, by the various groups, and I would like to thank all of those members who were part of that process and who contributed to the document. Of necessity, to keep the amended motion succinct, a lot of the ancillary supporting information has been put into a separate document that will be provided to the planning staff. That means that this is manageable as a motion, and I would seek for a seconder of this amended motion this evening.
Yeah, Chris Potter.
Sorry, can I have a point of order? I'd like a few minutes to read this before.
I'm just going to let Mr. Potter speak, and then I am going to adjourn for a few minutes, have a bit of a break so that we can read through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just dealing with the point of order before sort of adjournment takes place. Members have before you a motion which, as you've heard from Cllr Jarman, has been changed, been altered. The seconder of the original motion, I understand, was Councillor Spink. So just to make sure we're all sort of absolutely in compliance with the procedure rules. Councillor Spink, you were the seconder of the original motion. You're happy with the alteration? You are, thank you, sir.
Yes.
And obviously, under the procedural rules, a member may alter a motion they have moved, and Councillor Jarman moved it last time, with the consent of both the meeting and the seconder, hence inquiring with Councillor Spink. And the meeting's consent will be signified without discussion. And just for clarification, only alterations that could be made by amendment may be made, and I'm satisfied that that is within the rule. So as long as the meeting is happy for the alterations, then obviously, as the chairman said, I think we're about to go into an adjournment to allow you time to read that motion. Thank you.
Yeah, if we have a 10-minute break and adjournment so that you can read through that paper, and then we will come back at 19:11, please. Thank you. We'll return to the meeting and continue with item 8. We have the amended motion in front of us from Cllr Jarman, seconded by Councillor Spink. Councillor Jarman, would you like to go through this for us?
Well, it's as it is. I think we've had a lot of discussions within the members here. I wouldn't want to unduly take up even more of their time. I think people are very familiar with it. It's been several days of discussion, and I think all of the contributions have been incorporated in it. I appreciate a lot of the detail will go backwards, but the essence of this is simply to refer it back to Cabinet. I don't think we're here today to discuss the minutiae of it. Cabinet will have to deal with that as it returns to them. And then undoubtedly, after Cabinet have dealt with it, it will come back to full council.
Does anyone else want to? Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've had some input into this proposal, but it still isn't exactly what I would want to see. Got an amendment to make, but I'd just like to say a couple of other things first. I wonder if at some point during the debate, the proposer and the mover could clarify precisely what they mean by the Cllr process section on item 4, particularly the reference to the informal body planning protocols working group taking over quite a lead role in that. I'd like some clarification about that. I'd like some clarification regarding item 8, contemporary and accurate data. The wording of that seems fairly loose to me. It's like I've had some involvement in composite motions at trade union and labour conferences in the past, and I know they tend to satisfy nobody, but that everybody gets a little bit of what they like. And I suspect item 8 is a bit like that, so I'd like some clarification. There is one paragraph I will oppose. That's item 5 on priority allocation of housing reductions. Once again, we see the NIMBY Charter as part of this council, which I voted against at the meeting exactly a year ago, along with about 5 other councillors. I've probably got a list of them somewhere in my folder. The amendment I'd like to make, Chair, is to item 9 regarding affordability. Affordable housing is something, you know, that I make no bones about. It's a key issue for me as a councillor. I entirely support item 2 regarding affordable rented accommodation. However, I think there's a confusion of mind regarding item 9, which I increasingly come across as to what affordable housing is when we talk about it. Affordable housing is housing. I mean, it's because of central government, to be frank. It's social housing. It's council housing in the old days. Now predominantly housing association. But we talk about affordable housing, whether rented or part ownership, shared ownership. And we have a definition here of affordable housing being housing for purchase. And frankly, purchasing for the vast majority of people in housing need on the Isle of Wight is beyond their reach, no matter what factor you put on there. People are not going to get a mortgage 5 times, 4 times, whatever. It's going to be very difficult. And I don't think we need to have that part. I also don't think we need to put in this strange beast, affordable social rented housing based on DWP benefit levels. I think all we need to say is affordable rented housing based on not more than 1/3 of net average local earnings is all we need to say. Therefore, I would propose that we remove the words affordable housing based on not more than 5 times average local income, and also remove the final line, and affordable social rented housing based on the DWP benefit levels. I'll look for a seconder.
Councillor Quigley seconded that. Would you like to reply to that, Councillor Jarman?
I'm very happy to. I'll take a number of those points, if I may. Regarding the Cllr process, there was not sufficient time in the last 48 hours to define what the process should actually be here, and it seemed rather than us trying to improperly define how that should be dealt with. And it was something that was mentioned by a number of members as an input following the meeting on Monday. I know it's been a topic that's been raised previously. I think it was Councillor Price who originally mentioned this many, many months ago. And I think there are others who have raised it since. It does need to be addressed. There is not, the purpose of this referring it back is not to provide the solution for that. It's simply to note that it is an item included on the list of items for which it is being referred back and seeking clarity. Now, it may be that Cabinet feels itself empowered to actually action that, but I think that it's probably better that the Planning Protocols Working Group, which already exists and of which Councillor Brodie is a member, seeks to provide resolution of that and hence input into that discussion and debate following its referral back. On the issue of item 5, these have been contentious issues, I'll admit, for some time. And I'm not surprised that they remain so at this point. I would urge, though, that at this stage, we are simply providing a list of items to be referred back to Cabinet for their reconsideration. We are not in this directing them to take any specific action, just that these are a list of items to be referred back to them. It is for them, working with the officers and others, to add the detail to that, to reconsider on these items and to decide a best way forward on it. On the affordability issue, this was raised, I think, 3 times in the contributions over the last few days. There is clearly a dichotomy between the sale of properties and the rent of properties. And Councillor Brodie is entirely right that the issue here is one of council housing. I know that that is not a proper term these days. I wish it was. I would use it myself. So we have to find a different way of describing it. There seem to be 2 different bases for referring to it these days, one of which is, of course, that 1/3 of the average net figure, and that was obtained from a site which Councillor Quigley kindly sent to us, which was a very useful site. It does contain a huge amount of information about how affordability should be calculated. Likewise, it does draw a distinction between housing which is within the private sector and housing which is what I will call true council housing in its old term, i.e. socially provided housing at a discount. So again, what we're seeking to do here is simply to provide items to be referred back to Cabinet, not to provide the answers that Cabinet have to decide. That is for them to decide. That is a separate process. And these are simply included as items for reconsideration. The last one is to deal with the issues that were raised under, I believe it was item 8. And I'll agree that the wording here is generous in its description. I think a number of us will smile at that term. There are a number of measures which other councils are using, and what we didn't want to be here was overly prescriptive, which was one of the issues raised with the previous motion, that it was too narrow. So there are a number of different inputs to this, not least of all, of course, our own housing needs analysis. So we tried to broaden the range of terms which could be included in that reconsideration. Again, it is an area of the DIPS which is being referred back, and we do expect a wide range of inputs to be taken into that reconsideration. And on that point, we were made aware last week of actions which are being taken by other councils in this regard. There hasn't been, again, time for us individually to follow up on that. One that we did follow up on with, for example, was Bristol. We did engage following their press release at the end of last week, which referred to their use of data and their considerations of national targets, principally driven by what they call Project 1000, which is really driving home and recognising their specific needs for council housing. And I will use that term, why not? It's a proper term, we all know what it means. And in that council, they've set themselves a target of, okay, they're a largest jurisdiction of 1,000 homes every year, of which 70% will be specifically affordable. Thank you.
Councillor Bacon.
It's a point of order, really, Chair. I thought the matter was being crossed over, referred to Cllr Jarman simply to indicate if he agreed with the amendment or not, and I'm still not sure.
Could you clarify that, please, Cllr Jarman?
Yes, I was addressing your question, actually, Chair, to comment on it, which I did. So specifically regarding the amendment proposed was regarding item 9. I think what we've got here is sufficiently broad guidance for it to be referred back. Again, I would not wish to be limiting what Cabinet should or should not consider. And clearly the focus is very much on that term of affordable rented housing based on that 1/3 of average income on the island. That council housing definition is clearly what is foremost in our minds. And I assume from the discussion we're having now that the officers and the Cabinet will take note of that specific reference when they do their reconsideration. So I would prefer to leave it as it is and suffice it to say that the guidance we've received today should be directed to them and should be sufficient to guide them.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's been quite heartening in the last 6 weeks, the discussions that have taken part across the chamber. I've had some very, very positive discussions with members of the whole local authority, and I think we are at a stage now where we can actually move forward with DIPS, and that's quite good. I think at the last meeting, most of us agreed with most of everything that was in the island plan, but there were still 1 or 2 issues that councillors had concerns about. Monday's briefing, we looked at the ONS figures and the numbers, and there was an assessment of why we couldn't suppress the numbers down as low as perhaps we all wanted to. One of the other things that has come up in the last 6 weeks is the feeling of all members about affordable and about social housing across the island. I think there is a wide groundswell of support for seeing more social housing. I'm going to call it social housing because that is what it is. It's about providing houses that local Isle of Wight people can afford in the right places at the right price. And generally speaking, Jeff is absolutely right. These are people that are renting, and we need to do much more for those people. I think we've let those residents down for generations, and we've got to start to restart where we're going. So I am supportive of this paper, very much so. There will be things that I can imagine that officers will be quite happy to incorporate within the DIPS. There may be some issues that may be a little bit sensitive, but again, we are in a position now to make sure that we address those. And if we can't include them, then we need to be open and transparent about why that is not the case. I'm going in with this with my eyes open, and I want to do everything that we possibly can do to make sure that our island, our planning committee, our planning officers have the teeth to be able to look at the right developments in the right areas for the right people at the right cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Garrett, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. First, can I clarify, are we debating Cllr Brodie's amendment at the moment, in which case I'll reserve my comments till we've disposed with Cllr Brodie's amendment? I note that Councillor Fuller has probably gone more broadly. It's whether you would wish me to speak broadly to Cllr Jarman's motion or wait until you've disposed with Cllr Brodie's amendment.
Okay, I'll refer to the monitoring officer for this.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett, and thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have an amendment tabled at the moment from Cllr Brodie directed to making certain amendments to, I think it's part 9, and therefore we need to dispose of that debate, as you rightly say, Councillor Garrett, on the amendment, and then see what happens on that amendment vote. So at the moment we're on an amendment debate in relation to specifically Cllr Brodie's suggested changing at item 9, and I hand back to you, Chair. Thank you. through you, Chair, unless members particularly want to add anything to the amendment debate, then we can go to the vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Pitcher, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Yes, I would. I'm against this amendment, primarily because of all the items listed, the 10 items listed in Councillor Jarman's amendment. Number 9 was the one I supported most wholeheartedly, and I'd not like to see it changed. I think it's very important when we look at the definitions. If we, in my view, we should be pushing for affordable housing to be based on 5 times average earnings, because if we don't, then we revert to the MPPF, which is 20%. And as the table on page 47 of our agenda shows very clearly, we need a reduction of 30% in order to make it affordable. And so I would not want to change any of that. I think the 30%, 1/3, is very important in order to make housing affordable on this island.
Chairman, again, unless any, yes, Chairman.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sympathetic to the arguments that Cllr Brodie has made, but on the basis that this is an advisory motion and that not every word will satisfy everyone, I think that's a physical impossibility, and the wording of item 9 could be better. I'm keen that affordable housing to buy is also included, along with affordable rented housing and affordable social rented housing. So for that reason alone, I'm happy with the wording as opposed to taking out certain elements.
So should we take this amendment to a vote? So those in favour of the amendment please raise your hands. Could we count those, please?
Chair, may I just ask, I think there might be some confusion. So could we just have the amendment read out so that we know clearly what we're voting on? Because it has got a little bit confusing, if I may say so.
So this is item 9 of the amendments, and it was taken out. Would you like to clarify that, Jeff? Because I think I know, but I might not. So
Always better to get the author to read. IPS to define the definition of affordable rented housing based on not more than 1/3 of the net average local earnings, nothing else.
So to clarify, we're taking out, we're adding in affordable rented housing and taking out the, no. Okay, is everyone clear about that then, that it's the IPS to define the definition of affordable rented housing based on not more than 1/3 of the net average local earnings? And we're voting on that to be changed to that wording. Do you want to re-voting on it? Yeah, I think we need to re-vote on that now that we're clear on that amendment. So those that would voting for that amendment. Those against? And those abstaining on it? Oh, thank you. Okay. You got those results, Murray? So it's 18 for the amendment, 11 against and 6 abstentions. So that amendment is carried. Thank you, Marie.
So, Chairman, the amendment, the amendment having been carried, now becomes a substantive motion. So the motion as proposed and amended by Councillor Brodie, which has been passed, becomes a substantive motion, and therefore it's a matter for debate. And I'll hand back to you, Chair, and I think Councillor Garrett indicates he wishes to speak.
I'll come back to you now, Councillor Garrett, to speak on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, you'll be unsurprised that I'll be talking to item 5 of this because of the reference to Camp Hill. There were some much better words circulating earlier today, but I understand that there is a need to have wriggle room for the Cabinet and wriggle room for colleagues to find their support for this. But I am clear that whilst I will grudgingly support this motion tonight, that it is my view that Cabinet must pay very special attention to protecting Parkhurst Forest. It is an island treasure and a national treasure. And that when it considers Camp Hill, it considers Camp Hill as being shorthand for 4 sites in the north of the ward that I represent, Parkhurst and Honeyhill. Not just Camp Hill, which I would remind is more than just the Camp Hill site, but Ministry of Justice lands across the prison estates, is Noak Common, and is Horsebridge Hill, Acorn Farm, and is the former library HQ. Those 4 are so close in proximity that they should be considered together. And indeed, one of the amendments that did come through from discussions earlier this year with Councillor Fuller and the planning officers was that there should be a master planning approach to that. And I think that's absolutely right. I hope that Cabinet will recognise that the red line can come in. I've offered since April views that could be done by removing some of the commercial designation that is currently in the DIPs, because of course those sites are very close to a number of major employers plus the industrial estate for small scale employment. That it can be done by intensifying the nature of some of the housing on those sites, given the employers that are there and the likely demographic that would need to access that housing for that employment. And also to recognise that the constraints of the 4 sites mean that any transport infrastructure must come out onto Horsebridge Hill, Parkhurst Road and Forest Road. There is no way I feel anybody in this chamber would want to drive a dual carriageway through Parkhurst Forest, through its triple SIs, through its ancient woodlands, through its essential streams that feed our watercourses in the centre of the island, and the other areas of importance to nature conservation. So it is recognising that there is a need to wriggle. I'm sure the Cabinet will wriggle. Councillor Fuller, I haven't asked you if he specifically will be wriggling, but has given me some warm words outside of this chamber, and I'm glad that he has listened to that. So I will leave it at that, but of course I will be paying very, very close attention to what emerges when it does emerge.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Chair. I just get a bit concerned that we're just finding different ways to build less houses every time this comes back. You know, we've had quite a long time to consider this. So if Cabinet doesn't agree with defining item 4 better, changing item 5 and item 8, what then? What happens then? Is this another evening wasted in the chamber? I think there's going to be, at some point, there's going to have to be a real shift in attitude about what we're trying to achieve here, and that is to give people of the island the chance to have their own front door. And I think that is more important than anything else.
Thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. Yeah, just really reiterate what Councillor Quigley said. I'm not sure this is going to move us on any further. We all worked very hard to get the position we were in September and very close to passing the island plan and moving on to the next stage, which we needed to for the island as a whole, but it's more than housing in the island plan. It's about employment as well, and many other very, very critical things for the development on the island. And it gives the protection as well. There's things in here that I'm going to abstain on this vote because it's coming to cabinet, and we can have our say there. And it would be wrong of me, I think, to vote for or against. It would give the wrong impression, I think. But just picking up on item 8, the contemporary and accurate data. Well, we use contemporary and we use accurate data. It's almost like saying that we're not using accurate data. Officers aren't doing their job properly, and they are doing their job extremely well. What I'm concerned about, seeing this is going to come back maybe in April. That's a year since we tried to start. Councillor Fuller started to address people's concerns a year ago in April, move and kicked it down the road so we could do the work, and we did do the work. And I'm just really concerned we're going to end up in another situation where people aren't happy because they haven't got their particular issues resolved to their satisfaction. And if we don't pass it, next time it comes to full council, we've got to wait another year. And that's another year when our island is unprotected, and it's basically open house, open season on the island for developers. So I'm really concerned, and I really do hope that we can all come to a consensus, as I shared with colleagues on Monday.
Cllr Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on the motion in general, I'll be absolutely frank. I'm quite relaxed about the current island planning strategy. The tilted balance in favour of development is the only device by which we are going to try and we can possibly deliver affordable rented housing. It's as simple as that. All of this dancing around on pinheads, etc., is all very interesting, but frankly, I'm entirely relaxed about that. So if it was lost a year, I'd live with it as a councillor. I represent people who have found 2 or 3 families in the same 2-bedroom place. That's just appalling. We talked at a meeting about, the number of people who are living in holiday camps, in caravans, being placed there by this council, the places that are not supposed to be used like that, because there's no other roof. People are entitled to shelter. It's as simple as that. I am not massively critical of this motion. I know I've amended section 9. There are 6 I have absolutely no problem with. I've listened to Cllr Jarman regarding item 4 on the Cllr and item 8 on the contemporary and accuracy data. I live with that. But like Cllr Quigley, I am worried about item 5 because I do think he's absolutely right. There are people in this chamber who have got a front door of their own, a nice comfortable living, who don't have any understanding. Maybe wrong here, but I suspect have no understanding of what it's like to be homeless. I live with somebody who was homeless in her youth. I used to deal with homeless people in London. I understand it. I've got a homeless shelter in my ward that causes me no end of headaches, to be frank, but I went with it to subsequent criticism because of the problems that have been there. Can I suggest another amendment to try and get round this? Because I am trying to find a way forward so that the Cabinet can then apply their supreme intellect to coming back to an even better draft island plan strategy. Can I suggest that it reads, I'll read it in full the way I think it should be as an amendment. And it is all of the first sentence. IPS to give special consideration to capitalising on reduced housing targets in order to relieve pressure on greenfield sites by retaining some of the existing development boundaries. Full stop. That won't keep Councillor Garrett happy, who's been extremely parochial for a Lib Dem councillor. I thought you had a grander vision, Andrew. It won't keep the councillors from Freshwater or the leader of the opposition happy, but it gives the Cabinet the freedom to look at it. It gives Councillor Fuller, the portfolio holder, the opportunity to discuss with planning officers how they can progress that. It doesn't tie their hands with this obsession with Camp Hill, Bembridge and Freshwater. I understand that providing affordable housing there, apart from Camp Hill and the other two, may be difficult, but let's not tie our hands just yet. I did see a possible amendment to a different direction to this from one councillor, which seems to have disappeared. And maybe that councillor, I won't name him, but maybe he can pursue that further with Councillor Fuller if my amendment goes through. Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Quigley seconded that. So we now have another amendment to the amended motion on the table. So we will vote on that. Does anyone want to speak on that amendment specifically? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to address, I think, Cllr Brodie and Cllr Quigley, I agree with them entirely that affordable housing is absolutely crucial, and affordable rental housing and social housing. It's something I've been talking about in this chamber ever since I got elected, and I've had various sparring matches with Councillor Stevens over it. And I'm concerned that this council is not delivering affordable housing while it's in the tilted balance. Nothing in the island plan, I think, makes that more likely than the current situation. Referring specifically to, I think, Bembridge and Freshwater, probably not Camp Hill within the context of item 5. I agree with Councillor Quigley. Everyone on the island should have a front door. Building on these particular sites in Bembridge and Freshwater is not about giving islanders a front door. It's much more likely to be about giving mainlanders a second front door. Including these sites in the island plan is about making a lot of money for a few number of people to build expensive homes. It's not about delivering homes to islanders most in need. I'm relaxed about specific wordings of motions, but outside this chamber, if Bembridge and Freshwater are not included, I'll obviously continue to have conversations with the cabinet member and members of other wards who share a vision about delivering fewer homes on sensitive green belt that is more about making money for fewer people than delivering affordable homes.
Thank you, Councillor Spink.
Thank you, Chair. I too share the values of Councillor Brodie and Councillor Quigley, and I've made it clear on many occasions. I'm a very strong proponent of what I call council housing and social housing. And the reason I'm so critical of the draft island planning strategy is I don't think it's going to change the situation. We have been building in the way that the draft planning strategy really advocates for years on this island. And we've got 2,000 people on the housing register. We need to get real. This DIPS won't solve that problem because the current definition of affordable housing, people in the on the housing register won't get a look at the housing if we let developers do it. And what I think this amendment and this paper does is it actually makes the likelihood of delivering a properly social, council, affordable, all of those terms, housing for people to rent. Now I speak for, because it's my ward, and there's nothing wrong in that, I speak for my ward, which includes Freshwater. And what I can see no point in, quite frankly, is the fields of Freshwater being filled up with the type of houses that developers want to build, and 35% at the most so-called affordable, which we all know if we put our hand on our hearts, will not be affordable to islanders on the average wage. Now, if you keep the borders of Freshwater as they are, then the draft plan provides for rural exception sites rural exception sites aim to be 100% social housing, but in the current climate, we'll probably have to have an element of open market housing. And the DIPS has been amended at my request to include a local need requirement. Now, this will mean that development in freshwater can take place if there's a local need for social housing, and there is. But it won't take place willy-nilly on some allocated site for developers to make more money. And it's time this council damn well woke up and realised that we're not solving the problem. And I don't know why certain members of this House like to attack this document, because the reality is it's a social housing document. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you for letting me back. Looking at item 5, it does say IPS to give special consideration. That doesn't mean that necessarily those settlement boundaries will be moved or not. We are giving it special consideration. We are looking at the evidence and we will be balancing that evidence from the feedback that we're getting. I think Councillor Spink also hit the nail on the head as well about rural exception sites. If you do alter the settlement boundary, you are then putting those sites outside the settlement boundary, and therefore you have to have good reasons to develop on that land. Now, a good argument that I would use is that if a developer comes along and wants to put in a larger proportion of social housing, then that's a good thing, isn't it? And I would actually support that. You know, I've listened to Joe, I've listened to Chris and members from Freshwater, and I think this actually gives us more ammunition to be able to do more to give people of the West White and of Bembridge social housing, which is desperately needed in those areas. We want to see those communities becoming sustainable communities, and the only way we're going to do that is to provide local houses that local people can afford. Hopefully, Jeff, they will be rented. So I support the proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. And this isn't to go in the dips or amend anything or anything. It's just a suggestion that this council has a conversation in the future about the DFLs, about the down from Londons and who is buying all the houses in Bembridge and Seaview and all the nice houses. Why don't we actually have the conversation of charging them 4 times the amount of council tax to actually have the privilege to be here? They don't make any claim on adult social care. They don't make any claim on children's services, but it would be really nice if they want the luxury of living in this island that they actually pay towards those services. So I don't want to make any changes, but I do think we need to have that wider conversation. Everybody keeps saying everyone's having these holiday homes that they come for like 1 week in the year. Well, actually, for snob value, they'll probably pay 4 times the amount of council tax. But, we ought to have that conversation and stop people either buying or actually pay that extra for the privilege to be on our beautiful island.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
To Councillor Mosdale's point first is we can't. You need government legislation to do that. Unfortunately, otherwise we'd all vote for it. We could do that tonight. It's a lovely idea, and I think at least I've said it at least twice. I know Cllr Brodie said it at least twice in the past. So what we look forward to when the government do change legislation, the vote will be simple. So thank you for that, Councillor Mosdale. Back to the Councillor Brodie's motion. We're getting feels like we're trying to nail a blancmange to a trampoline at the minute. There's a few things we need to get our head around. There's a difference between fields that are green and green fields. There's a very clear definition of greenfield site, and it isn't as simple as you think. So I think that is an important thing that probably does need to be taken to Cabinet so they can inform us all what we should all be talking about. But how do we know? There's this assumption that Bembridge and Freshwater is only going to attract to developers that build houses that are far too expensive, which means we've got no faith in the current planning system at the moment and no faith in the future planning system. But somehow these words mean that we will insist on social housing and everything else. These are just for the birds. I'm sorry, but this makes no sense. And I mean that in the kindest of ways. How do you know there's not going to be a benevolent benefactor that comes and says, actually, I think people in affordable housing deserve to live in Bembridge and Freshwater? That could happen. Reducing the number of sites across the island, simple market factors means that to reduce the number of sites across the island, the existing ones will become more expensive and less available for social housing. So to my mind, the small amendment Councillor Brodie has made to the wording makes sense, and I'm yet to hear anyone actually say that his wording didn't make sense. So I support Councillor Brodie's amendment.
Councillor Adams.
Richard answered my question really. It was, I agree with what Councillor Mosdell said regards to rates and that, but a couple of years ago, I put in a freedom of information request for people that were paying neither council tax nor business rates. And there's a lot of them. There's just under 10,000 of them. And when I asked for the figures and got the figures back, this took a lot of probing to get. The sums of money come out at just under £10 million. I find that astounding that any council in this country, and the government sanction it because the government do sanction it, because we can't stop who buys these houses. I just find that an astounding sum of money. And how do we stop it about legislation? It's a problem.
Councillor Quirk.
I'm afraid I have to disagree with Councillor Quigley. I was chair of planning committee for 4 years, and all of the major sites come out with wanting to build 3 and 4 bedroom detached houses. And we've approved enough 4-bedroom houses to do our housing needs supply for the next 20 years. That isn't where the need is. A 4-bedroom house in Bembridge will probably go on the market for about £1 million. If you, even with the new plan that allows for up to 40% requirement of developers, even at 60% of £1 million at 600,000, no housing association on the island can afford those homes. They'll buy a 4-bedroom house in Newport for 400,000 instead. So it's, we're not building houses through developers that meet the housing needs. That's a fallacy. There might be some wonderful, generous hearts out there, but we don't see much of them.
Councillor Pitcher.
Thank you, Chair. I find it quite interesting that one or two of the things have been said, considering the fact that this chamber just voted to ensure people couldn't actually afford to buy their own home. But talking to this point exactly, I tend to agree with Councillor Brodie with taking these 3 out. I think we shouldn't narrow it. And the point about, I think I may be paraphrasing Councillor Quirk about no white knight riding in to buy these houses in Bembridge and Freshwater to let for social. Let's not forget that item 1 deals with our own housing company. And there is no reason why our own housing company could not buy the site and build the houses and then let them socially. That is what it is there for. So potentially there is a white knight because it's us. So the possibility is always there, because regardless of anything else, the demand for that housing will always be there, and eventually, hopefully, in a functioning market, that demand is met. So I think really, I tend to agree with Councillor Brodie here.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually been really good to listen to some cross-chamber conversation on a really important issue. Island planning strategy is really important. It's good that we do need a plan when it's right. As Councillor Jones-Evans said, we do need a plan. I'll back a plan when it's the right plan to back. I'll happily back a plan. It's good to hear Councillor Fuller say he's in favour of the amendments. He takes on board the amendments and is happy to take those back to Cabinet. There's been some good comments. Councillor Quigley's comments I agree with. Councillor Mosdell's comments I agree with. Point 5 was always a concern of mine. I'm happy to back Councillor Brodie's motion because when you name 3 specific sites in a plan, everyone around this room could put a site in that plan or an area in that plan that they don't want to have in, they want to have special consideration. So I won't I've got no problem if those areas are taken out, because we could all come up with an area to go in the plan. I think as Cllr Jarman said at the beginning, this is a paper just giving some direction back to Cabinet on the things that we would like to see incorporated in that plan. Councillor Fuller's on board with that. So if these things are incorporated in the island planning strategy, get it done, bring it back to table, we'll vote it through and get on with it. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I think Councillor Brodie's amendment is a good compromise. Personally, I have campaigned for many years that we have hard boundaries. I think this business about building next to a boundary is ridiculous. But so I was very pleased to see that. But I think it's unrealistic that we can even start to deliver the sort of housing numbers that we need to deliver if we stick to the existing boundaries. So I think what Councillor Brodie has is a very good compromise, and I should be supporting it.
Okay, Councillor Lilley.
I too will support Councillor Brodie within this, because I actually think now, with the way that house prices have actually gone up and have gone up on the island, right across, there are just as many in Ryde that are now coming into the £1 million mark, right, than you've actually got in necessarily Bembridge or other areas. Places are in areas of the island that are developing are then becoming more attractive, and then people, yes, it's an open market, and we don't have the legislation, perhaps we should do, to actually prevent that. And some people who do actually come here do invest and bring jobs and various other things. So it's a difficult argument, and I think it's a side. I mean, within Ryde alone, prices have gone up nearly 40%. The price of houses have gone about 40% in the last 18 months. You know, they're actually moving up. We also got to be very careful, because until we have a housing company to really get government funding to go into the housing associations, which is not the case, to actually build social housing, we are reliant, and Councillor Brodie is exactly right, to that 35%. And the private developers will not build houses unless they're actually making profit. We forget that some of the landowners that have now brought these sites forward have bought this land for the exact purpose in the 1980s. You know, if you look at the ownership of land, how it has actually changed, where people actually started to plan this a long time ago, and they want their pension, they want their pound of flesh, as it were, in that site. And that's why it is important that I believe we don't actually start to argue about different sites. We should leave it to the Cabinet to come back with the site. And my particular item that I put in was about a time frame, because if we don't come back around March, April, we are going to lose another year with this, and those developers that you're frightened of or fear are going to come forward on their applications. Our officers are going to have to recommend, and if you refuse, it will go back to the inspectorate, and they will grant those applications. That's the reality on the island.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just sitting here wondering what the general public would actually be thinking about these conversations that we're having here. The time is now to do something. We have to do something now, and we have to do it quickly. It seems that unity has broken out in many ways within this chamber, where it was actually not a million miles away from each other on a lot of the things that we've discussed. There are tweaks and semantics happening. I think we need to get on with it, but we need to remember
what my priority from adult social care is. I need a workforce, and I need a workforce quickly. And the thing that's holding me up is the rented market, because I need that workforce to care for all of those people that we're now running out of carers for, and in all the industries. We've talked about an industry coming here, a film industry, creating 1,000 jobs. Well, let's face it, not all of those 1,000 jobs are going to come from the island. They're going to have to bring in specialists. They're going to need somewhere to live. So we need to build a range of housing. We need to get on with it. And we're spending too much time talking about it. I'm sorry. Time is of the essence. I did like Councillor Brodie's comments earlier, though, and it's really nice to be described as supreme intellect for once, because I've always been, which doesn't fit me either way, by the way, because I've always been described as a complete and utter, well, we won't say that, but but I think the thing is we need to do it. So I'm going to suggest that rather than keep talking, let's move to the vote. I will be supporting Councillor Brodie's amendment in this, because I think it's the right thing to do. But can we not please then go and spend hours and hours talking about, we just need to get on and do it. We won't all agree. We'll all fall out in lumps and bumps, but you know, this is not the time for it. Can we just move to the vote, please?
I believe we're now going to vote on then Councillor Brodie's amendment to the amended motion on item 5. Could you read it out so that we are completely clear what we are voting on again, please? Thank you, Councillor Brodie.
Okay, item 5 will read as follows. IPS to give special consideration to capitalising on reduced housing targets in order to relieve pressure on greenfield sites by retaining some existing development boundaries, full stop.
Okay, we're going to take it to the vote then. So those that are in favour of that amendment, please raise your hands. And those that are against that change of amendment. And those that would like to abstain on that. Thank you. The results are those in favour are 26, those against are 6, and those abstaining are 3. So that change of that motion is carried. Okay, I'm going to bring the monitoring officer in again just to clarify some points. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we now have a new substantive motion, which is the original motion as made by Cllr Jarman, as amended by Cllr Brodie's first amendment, and as amended by Cllr Brodie's second amendment. So that is now the motion to which you would go into debate and vote upon. Thank you.
Yes, I'm planning to go straight to the vote now. I think we've talked about it enough in most areas. So those that are in favour of the motion that is tabled with those amendments, please raise your hand. Anyone that hasn't got their vote? Oh, okay. Okay, those, yeah, put your hands down now. Those against that motion and those abstaining. Oh, one abstention. So that motion is carried. So that sends it back to the Cabinet and we will go from there. So now we are going on to item 9. That is the motions submitted. And I'm starting with motion A from Cllr Quigley. Would you like to speak on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. I won't talk around it for long because I think residents want action rather than words. And I think we've had plenty of, it's actually warm in the chamber tonight for the first time in a long time. I think we all know why. I don't think any of us expected to be in this chamber voting on a motion like this. I think if we're all honest, we'd rather not. But I do think everyone in this chamber got into local politics for the right reasons, and that is to help the residents of the island. Inflation today is just over 11%. Food inflation is tracking at 16%. 1 in 5 food bank users are in work, and there are more food banks in the country than there are McDonald's. The island needs leadership, help and hope, and that is the purpose of this motion. I propose this motion. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Lever is the second. Would you like to speak on that? No. Okay. So should we go to the? Does anyone else want to speak? Yeah, you can make a list for me, Wendy, please. Who was first? I'll go with Cllr Lilley.
Thank you. I totally support this motion and welcome it. I think it's important. We should have discussed it, in my view, at the last council meeting. I'm glad that we are now discussing it. We have people that have on this island that have been in poverty, and now they've got increased poverty. The actual expense to the poorest on the island of their food bill has nearly gone up by 60%. You know, people who have got money and have got income have far more freedom of choices. Those who are poor have limited. They can't necessarily afford the buses to get to the Aldi's or the Lidl's, etc. And we really need, as a council, to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure those who are most vulnerable on this island do get the support or the support that they need. I do wish to compliment that particularly the town and parish councils and the voluntary sector have mobilised on this island the same way they mobilised in COVID. And we actually have some extremely good voluntary organisations like the Footbridge Trust, the CAB, Isle of Wight Youth Trust, a range of charities that are actually working with small groups of that. In my ward, you've actually got a local church hall which acts as the community centre. You've already got people putting warm meals and providing space for the community. Within Rye, there's about 5 different kind of food projects that are making sure that people do get food. And I think the point that Councillor Quigley made is a lot of these are actually working families who actually are working all day but are not earning enough. And particularly the people who have mortgages. I don't want to get political, but we're waiting on a chancellor tomorrow to make a decision to fill a gap of a hole which was created by another chancellor prior to that, in that time. People were going to hit by the cost of living situation anyway because of national and international issues like the energy crisis. But now they're in a worse position. So I hope we're all going to be united tonight and support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
I think it's all already been said by Cllr Lilley, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. But it's not just the CABs and the aspires of this island that are producing good work, supporting initiatives. It's our local smaller organisations that get through on a shoestring and managing every penny and making everything count. And come on Friday, please, 9 for 9:30. The Food Poverty and Waste Conference 2022 at the Riverside. I've been invited down there by Pan together after Cllr Brodie, myself and Ian Lloyd visited Pan the other month, and that's open down there. It's a whole day. It starts about 9:30. Coffee from 9 o'clock and finishes at 4:30. Come along and avail yourself to the opportunity to meet some of these people that are the backbone of our island. I'll leave it at that. I will say that the Isle of Wight Council and the officers within the Isle of Wight Council work damn hard to try and pull things together as well, and deserve as much comment as anyone else. I would say that everything that we do down the line, from the Isle of Wight Council through to voluntary organisations and indeed other agencies, shows how well our island pulls together in a cohesive manner. I want to leave it at that, but don't forget Friday at the Riverside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Andre?
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, I'd like to thank Cllr Quigley for bringing this motion forward. I think, obviously, we are all very acutely aware of the cost of living crisis that we're in, but I think it's only right and proper and very helpful that we actually have things set out in front of us, that we can all, 39 of us, well, 37 that are here tonight, make that commitment. As we heard earlier, there's funding under the Household Support Fund that actually comes through my directorate. And I'd just like to highlight some of the key achievements that that the team have made between the 1st of April and the 30th of September. So the total Household Support Fund number 2 was, for the whole country, was 421 million. Our share of that was £1,131,576.08. And that was in the 6-month period from the 1st of April to the 30th of September. Now, one of the conditions on this fund is that not only do we have to fulfil the criteria, but any funds that we do not allocate within that criteria have to be given back. And I can confirm that the full amount was allocated. We didn't actually have to give anything back. Under the following, I'll just give a highlight of some of the following issues. So just under 5,000 eligible households with children were issued with food vouchers covering the 2-week school Easter holiday period at a rate of £15 per child per week. We had the Isle of Wight Food Voucher Scheme, where over 3,200 applications were individually checked and processed by a small team within our revenues and benefits. So that's a really good example of different teams across the island working very effectively to get this funding out to exactly where it is needed and where it will have the maximum impact. And out of that, a further 2,000 voucher values at £125 each were sent directly to eligible pensioners that had not applied by the end of the scheme. And I have to say that during that scheme period, the criteria did actually change, and we did amend that and we did reflect that, but we still managed to allocate the whole amount. Community grants totaling just under I didn't get my Amber, but I think you get the idea that as a council, we are doing everything that we can. We are listening, we are taking action, but we do need to do more. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Stevens, for coming up to my ward with Ian Lord a few weeks ago. I think you said I was visiting. I spent probably my whole life in Pan and Barton. We've been dealing with poverty issues on Pan for all the time I've been an elected member, because, as I repeatedly say, I used to go to the Health and Wellbeing Board on a regular basis to remind them about this. My ward is the most deprived ward on the Isle of Wight. And the cost of living crisis is just the final straw, really, for us. Fortunately, Pan Together, which I created 15 years ago now, has developed in such a manner with a superb manager and a fantastic team of volunteers and great donations from supporters, etc., into a phenomenally effective voluntary sector organisation, which some of you will be aware won the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service as part of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, which everybody at PAN was very, very proud about. I'm delighted to see a motion like this from Councillor Quigley. It's the sort of motion that I used to bring on a regular basis to full council when I was a Labour councillor, and it's glad to see that somebody's picking up that heritage, really, I suppose, for want of a better word, and hopefully he'll get a better support than I used to get from David Pugh, Dave Stewart, etc. In the past, and I think hopefully we'll get a. I get a sense when I talk to the leader of the opposition that they're still Tories, but I get I mean I'm not daft, they're still Tories, but there's a different attitude. But I won't be here next time to see if they win the next election, if they change like the last lot did. But I would hope that they don't. The motion is something obviously I'm going to support. And I do think, the Alloy Council is funneling lots of money into organisations. PAN together has been very good at pulling in that money. And I think if you looked at the list, Debbie, who's acclaimed it, PAN together probably very near the top of the list. And I know at Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council started to tap into that as well now. I hope the town, parish and the community councils, because some people still forget there is one community council on the Isle of Wight. It's an excellent motion. I hope we can all get behind it. And thanks again, Richard, for bringing it. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. I also support this motion. I think it's a good motion. As with any motion, there's different wording and different versions of wording that individuals would like, but I agree with the essence of all of it. There plainly is a cost of living crisis, and the resolution part of it, the council resolves to all of those things, obviously are sensible. For that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't very strong support throughout the chamber for that. I won't say any more because I'm conscious of time, but I support it, and I'm pleased to see that Councillor Quigley has finally got it debated, because obviously he brought it some time ago.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Undoubtedly, I support this motion. It is, as someone who grew up in poverty, I know from my memories just how hard it is as a child to experience that poverty, to as an adult to manage that process for your family. It is extraordinarily hard, and to know that there are those who are out there who have got your back is extraordinarily important. In terms of delivering on this motion, the points I would make are: let us not forget to get the voice of those who, with the lived experience, into our decision-making processes. Those who are living in poverty know best how to manage their situation, and ultimately, on their own, under their own steam, or with the help of others, get through it and beyond it. So let us make sure that those voices are captured and engaged and are part of what we decide. In terms of decision making, let us hope that we can have an agility of decision making, so that if things must change quickly, they do change quickly, that we are not hidebound by the bureaucracies of any large organisation in ensuring we tackle these issues. We must, of course, look elsewhere to other councils, and I believe Councillor Quigley did indeed do that as inspiration for this motion, and we must maintain those dialogues. But finally, I would say that what happens this winter and then through next year and into the next winter is going to be a crisis, but it is also going to be chronic for many people. Many people will be living with the impacts of these times for many years, for some, for the rest of their lives in the same way that we have already recognised with COVID. So I think one thing we might want to look to as a council is to completely review our corporate plan and reshape our corporate plan to address those twin crises that we face, and of course the ongoing crisis and the most existential to us of the climate emergency. But again, I can congratulate Councillor Quigley for bringing this forward, and I so welcome what I hear around this chamber that there is this great support, the help that we can give to our fellow residents.
Thank you, Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. And I fully support the comments that Councillor Garrett has just made, because it's pretty much the theme that I'm going down in my comments. It's not just an emergency now for the people out there, it's an emergency for this council, very much so in the funding, and we are all sitting here with bated breath waiting to see what comes tomorrow. I'd like to think that something will come from government, particularly for adult social care. It's not likely to be enough, but something must come, or we will face some very, very difficult challenges moving forward and decisions. And we will and should do that together, all of us, because this is not a game that we're playing. This is about real people's lives. It's vital that we have a minimum wage set for particularly those in the care industry, because we're losing people at a significant rate in the care industry right across the UK. And that was very, very evident today in a meeting that I had with the Coastal Rural Network and councillors from all across the UK about the real pressures that are facing us. We're not just talking about people being able to live in their homes safely. We're actually talking about the impact that this will have on our NHS system. And when I say system, I'm talking about everything from GPs right through to our hospitals. They are already at crisis level, with 5 declared critical incidents at the hospital in less than 5 months. That is an indication about why we need to act. It's why we should support this proposal without any questions. What we do know is from today's meeting at local network is that we're not on our own. It's not just this authority that's struggling financially, it's 50 others right across the country that are all in a very, very difficult place. And so when we make our decisions, as Councillor Garrett has made, we need to remember that our job is about the health and well-being of people. And the Human Rights Act, as kind of alluded to by Cllr Brodie, that is health, well-being, a roof over our heads and keeping warm first. And those must be the priorities for me. Otherwise, and it's a sad reality, my public health team are already aware of it, people will die when they turn their heating off at home, because people get cold very quickly. And especially for those people who live in isolation, out in the country, or even isolated from their neighbours next door. We must look after each other now in order to save life. That is the bottom line for me.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Councillor Quigley for bringing this motion forward, and I regret that we weren't able to debate it in September, because we sat here today, we're actually in a worse position than we were those 6 weeks ago. I think it's really important that we remember who this affects. You know, the cost of living crisis affects the poorest in society more than others because they have limited income. It's very obvious. And offering rented accommodation, and we know that rented accommodation on the Isle of Wight, by and large, is of a poor quality. With those of us who were at the recent event at Vestas, we saw about how much work there is to be done on making our homes warm and more efficient. There's a lot of work to do with retrofitting. I think it was something like 70% of our homes need retrofitting, and even some people that own their homes, older people that in larger homes, they are going to be suffering as well. So, thank you again, but we need to really I don't know what we can do here as a council. You know, I've been calling actually since March that we need to have a, you know, a gold status group, as we did with COVID, to look at this. And you know, we know that we have had this the working group since the summer. So we've already got that dedicated working group that's that we're resolving in this motion to talk about tonight. But I think we need to all of us make our voices known to government, because really this is beyond what we can do here as a council. All we can do is react and do the best for our residents, which is what we do anyway. But they're going to look to us even more now, and we need to be united with that. But the message to government is the poor in society are going to be taking the brunt of this, absolutely no doubt. So I think they need to take a long, hard look at that and support councils who have the responsibility, as Councillor Lover said, for people's health and well-being. They need to support us properly. We've proven time and time again how much it costs us as an island to deliver our services, and it costs residents more just to, you know, pay for our food and petrol and everything else, and never mind, you know, getting off the island. So we are in a unique situation here, and we really do need the adequate funding that we've been asking for. I think it's about 60 years now, isn't it? Something like that. It was first raised in Parliament. So we really are in this situation through no fault of our own, but through the action of our government. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak initially because I just thought seconding this great motion was enough, but everybody's been nice and placid about this, I think. But I'm glad Councillor I'm glad Councillor Jones-Evans has brought up a message to government, because I think that's what needs to be really focused on here, is the visceral anger that are in communities about the situation they're in, not just despair anger. You can see that in campaigns like Enough is Enough, and the state that unions are in at the moment. We've got nurses having to go on strike because they can't afford to do the job that they're doing at the moment, which is just an outrage. So I think we need to get across the anger that communities are feeling at the moment, that people in Westminster who are protected from the realities of the decisions that they make, and the recklessness that they're exerting in Westminster at the moment, is just unacceptable, and it needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you very much. I suppose that the headlines of what I wanted to say have already been said by Councillor Jones-Evans. One thing I think that sometimes we can be guilty of with this type of motion is making some broad statements and aims and not thinking quickly enough about the mechanics of it and how we can actually put these things into effect. And I note, I think it might have been Councillor Garrett's remarked on decision making. And yeah, I want to see this coming forward, but I think we need to think carefully about how we can bring forward a process of decisions being made in a way that properly considers these points. We have now in council reports a number of things that are considered. We say we will consider it's part of the corporate plan, and you see them mentioned there. And I don't want to attract the usual looks, but biosphere is one of them. Climate change, young people is another one. And I think sometimes a council struggles a little to make sure that it is properly considering those sort of things and not paying lip service to them when the decision-making process and a paper is going through and a paper is being written. I'm sure Councillor Quigley is aware of it, but I think it may be a useful model to think of in this regard, and that's the donut economics model. And there's a very good model of how this can work in Cornwall. And I'd commend that to be thought about. We are thinking about it in the neighbourhoods team to look at those sort of decisions in relation to climate change and so on, but I think it can be extended to include thinking about decisions relating to the cost of living emergency. And there is a crossover because, of course, achieving carbon neutrality, part of that is better use of energy. making sure your energy bills are not so big, so as many people are facing now, and also matters like better production in relation to food, so that food is available, food can be locally sourced, food is not cripplingly expensive. And as I say, I think there's a model there, and I would ask, as we take this motion forward, as I don't hear anyone objecting to it, so I do hope we're going to get a unanimous vote in favour of it. We actually just think about how we can put it into effect effectively as soon as possible. And as I say, there's some work going on in one direction at the moment, but I'd like to see that extended out. I'd like to see us looking at the model, particularly that it is run by Cornwall. I think they're perhaps the paradigm model of that at the moment. And it's also useful because it stops.
Stops you talking.
Timing. It stops that silo approach to thinking and decision making, which I think sometimes can, again, undermine achieving what we need to achieve with this. And we do need to achieve what this motion sets out, but I just want to see that we are actively working as to how we achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peace Wilcox.
Well, I just wanted to reassure people really that I have already contacted government about the island deal. I use that loosely. It's about us being treated as fairly as the mainland with regards to financing. It's all about that model. Unfortunately, due to the number of different government changes and people, it seems like I am writing a letter almost every day to a different minister and chasing them up to try and do it. But I want to assure people I will fight for the rights for the people of this island. I always have. I've done it since I was, actually that will give my age away, since I was 7 years old, which is 51 years ago. When I started a national savings bank for my children at Love Lane Primary School. Actually, one of the poorest wards, in fact, the poorest ward on the island at that time. And those children used to go and get bottles to take back to the pub to get the £1, to get the penny back, so they could afford 10p stamp, and then they built up a collection. I've always helped the people. 51 years I've been helping my residents in Cowes Medina ward. They're in my lifeblood. I have to thank sincerely the staff that stepped up very quickly when we raised this issue back in about March last year. We knew what was coming. If you remember back to May 21, or I think it might have been June 21 when we got elected, I said that the COVID recovery mentally, physically and financially was always my priority. I knew COVID, we may have got immune to that with herd, with the herd thing, but the most important thing was I knew people were going to be suffering for a very long time. It would have a detrimental effect. So I'd like to thank Chris Ashman's here and Ian Lloyd, who stepped up really quickly on all of our work to do around poverty. For Richard Quigley for coming forward, Councillor Quigley, sorry, for coming forward so quickly to assist with this. He said something needed to be done. I said, Richard, have you got the time to do it? He took that mantle, all about the community wealth building and helping us. I'm always supportive of anyone that will come with a solution. I remember Councillor Pitcher coming to my door and being an absolute godsend when he said he would help out about the Islands Forum. And as it was, things sort of went a little bit awry and things. But anyway, I did mention months ago to you all about food waste worldwide. 40% of the food we buy is wasted. Absolutely disgraceful. We should be doing so much more. And as councillors, we've got a website. I hope you're all aware of that website. I hope you will all direct that to your residents in your newsletters and everything else to get that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Cllr Jarman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Naturally, I will be supporting this motion this evening, as I assume every right-minded councillor here will do the same. I think benevolence is one of the aspects that we discuss, and relief that we provide to those less fortunate to ourselves is incumbent on every one of us and every organisation to do everything that is within their power. I think one of the aspects I would like to emphasise here is that people are able to obtain a living wage and to have some quality and dignity in their lives by having quality employment and sustainable employment, and the security of employment moving forwards. And therefore, it is also incumbent on us to make sure that we support the wider business community on the island, to make sure that they can survive, they can thrive, and they can deliver those quality jobs, which will give people that quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. Not very many people know why I became a councillor in the early days. I've been kicking around for a few years like a bad smell, but I got elected generally because I was a councillor in Ryde. Ryde North East back in the day was very, very deprived area. It still is. I had quite close friends and worked with people that were living in, sofa surfing, living in people's flats, people living sort of like with relatives, people with drug problems, alcohol problems, and the amount of people that I used to help was incredible. The people used to come and see me. I started this thing called a local surgery back in 1995, and the surgery generally was basically there to help and support my residents. But people generally, after a while, came to see me to help them fill their housing benefit forms out, because people couldn't read or they couldn't write. They didn't have those skills to be able to do that. I think we've moved on as council. We've provided help centres. We now have agencies out there that can support these people. But I think we're in a new tsunami, if you like. We have young people coming through the system. We have parents unable to support their children, and a lot of those people are becoming grounded very much. I think one of the things I'm very pleased to see is the cost of living website now up and running online. The amount of information on that website is incredible. I hope that members that aren't aware of it will use that website to signpost people to the areas where they need to be, where they need the support. We still have a lot of people in our communities that want to be below the radar, and that brings me up to where I am at the moment in Gurnard. We have a lot of people in Gurnard living in social housing, people living in chalets, holiday units. They live there because there's nowhere else they think they can afford. But at the moment, living in holiday accommodation means that those people haven't got the same safeguards on their electricity, their energy bills, that the rest of the population doesn't, and they are really, really struggling. Again, I know I've got an interest in this in my relationship with the Footprint Trust, but again, the Footprint Trust are going out. They're talking to individuals, they're supporting those individuals. And if any individuals out there need support, I would urge them to call 822282 for their support, because they do a terrific job. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for their comments. I think, Cllr Quigley, do you want to come back on any of that before we go to the vote?
Almost forgot what we were talking about. Sorry. I'm not expecting any thanks from anyone for bringing this motion forward, because I do actually genuinely believe every single one of you would have done it, and I just got there first. So I did thank you for your support, but I don't expect any accolades for it. Thank you to all the councillors that are going to support it. There is sometimes a glue that does bind us together, and I think that is helping our residents. I'd also like to thank the officers for the work they've done so far, and I know the amount of work they're going to do. But I'm also very conscious, and Councillor Baker's point, that we all say this in relative comfort to those people that really need our help. So whilst it's great for us to all agree and talk about it, it's more about the action other than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we all go to the vote now. So those for this motion, please raise your hand. Is there anyone against? Any abstentions? No, then that's unanimous. Thank you. That's carried. That motion's carried. We go on to
Chair, I'll go into point of order, but I think it's a point of order.
Okay.
I think we've got a bit of unfinished business from earlier. We have appointed a new chief executive this evening who was not in the room when we did so, who has managed to, luckily it seems, make her way back from the mainland today, and or wherever she was. She's travelling anywhere at the moment, it's a bit of a tricky thing. But I think, surely, Chair, we should be formally welcoming Wendy. Now we know who she is.
I think she was going to formally do it through the process, but Wendy, would you like to, now that they've got to this stage, yeah, I think we should formally welcome Wendy Cllr as our new chief executive. Is there anything you like? I actually told Wendy she should own this moment and that she should be proud of herself. So I think she definitely deserves that round of applause. And would you like to say anything, Wendy?
Well, at risk of saying the wrong thing, I suppose really I just have to remind members that what you've agreed on is to offer me the job. I haven't had the letter yet, so I haven't actually accepted it. But thank you very much for the round of applause. And I appreciate your support in offering me that role. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So maybe we'll do a real big official announcement at the next one. Yeah, she might not accept. She might change her mind overnight. So we'll see what happens. So moving on, I've forgotten where I am now. The next motion was motion B by Cllr Jarman, but I believe he was going to withdraw this due to it being dealt with at item 8. Is that correct, or would you?
Yes, Chair. So I think this item's been covered with item 8 on the item that we've earlier agreed. I do have one question, and I can't think of another place to leave it, so I will leave it here. I was hoping there might be a legal officer present this evening who could address it. One of the issues that we face in comparing data or achieving data from our discussions with other local authorities was raised by them again this morning. They've received external legal advice regarding the use of contemporary data, as have we. Our data circulated to members indicated that that was to be kept confidential. Their advice circulated to members, which is extensive from both Brighton and Bristol, is also labelled confidential. I think for us to be able to work together, we will need to be able to share information and advice openly and transparently. I believe other authorities are willing to do so. So I will leave the question to be addressed separately by a member of our legal staff into what is the best method for us to be able to share and obtain legal advice provided on the use of contemporary data in developing local plans. Thank you. And of course, the item is formally withdrawn.
I was just going to double check that. So it's withdrawn, so we're not voting on that motion, but I believe notes have been made to get back to you about the question you've raised. On to item C on the motions by Cllr Lilley. Would you like to proceed with this?
Well, before I formally withdraw it, because we have had a good debate about the cost of living crisis, I do wish to, my particular wording was to actually declare a cost of living emergency. I have to thank, it was a great honour with Councillor Quigley, who got there first, as it were, with it. And it was very sad at the last meeting that these motions weren't fully discussed. So I'm glad there was 100% support for this. I do wish to just highlight, before I formally withdraw, that Martin Lewis, who's been speaking very nationally about this issue, has warned the cost of living crisis could hit people harder in the spring rather than this winter. And I think we need to be very conscious that the help we're giving is actually well extended into the year and the year beyond. I think our leader said very clearly that this is going to be a hard trawl. You know, some of us probably can remember the 1980s, and that I can remember actually having a mortgage of nearly 19% within that, and some of that. I can also remember on this island not having any light because there wasn't any energy in the 70s, and I actually did my schoolwork with a candle during that period. So I think it's important that we just re-emphasize. But my last particular point is to say that research has shown that over the last 6 months, the cost of living crisis is seriously affecting people's mental health. And I really want to emphasize about the mental health side that COVID-19 has increased human burnout. We have staff that are totally exhausted. We have workers right across this, you know, nurses, people in factories that are totally exhausted, and we need to look at making sure that we hold their hand through this distress and actually make sure they get the help. Because I can tell you the suicide rate is going up. There is more isolation of that. And we got more family breakup increase than we've ever had on the island, partly to do with coming through this difficult time. So thank you for the debate, but please think in your wards about the people who tonight might decide to take their life because they cannot cope with what is happening in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. Wrong thing to do, Michael. That you made a good point, if I may, Chair. You made a very good point that there is a difference in that you're asking this council to declare that, which Richard's motion doesn't. Now, I think that's quite an important thing that we should have considered. So I'm really disappointed that you withdrew it. Draw the withdrawal, Michael.
Do people like me to actually bring it back? Is there a seconder?
If we go straight to the vote, I think that would be helpful.
Would someone second
Can I have a
that
second
we are
for the
declaring a cost of living emergency? So it's seconded by Councillor Bacon. And then we're going to go straight to the vote on that. I think we've debated the reasons for it, but would you like to speak on it? Or
Well, I think we have.
make it quick?
Point of order, it's been withdrawn. It's recorded. It will be on YouTube tomorrow. It's been withdrawn. I know why Councillor Jordan doesn't want to move on, because he doesn't want to debate the floating bridge.
Or you don't want to
I do.
declare a cost of living crisis?
Very much do, Councillor Robertson. Bring
It's
it up.
been withdrawn as a matter of fact, and it will be on YouTube tomorrow.
I think Councillor Robertson is correct, and I actually uphold within that. But I also welcome what Councillor Jordan said, and I think if we can actually take fully that on board. So thank you.
Bring it again next time, Michael.
Okay, so we're moving on to item D. That's another motion, a motion by Cllr Brodie. Would you like to speak on this one?
Of course. Thank you, Chair. We have 7 minutes to go till 9 o'clock, and I realise we're not going to be able to debate this. And frankly, I had decided earlier on I was going to withdraw the motion, and I'll tell you why. Essentially, all I wanted to do was to mark the card of the leader. And can I also say that criticism of a leader of the council is something that is part of the role of an opposition councillor. Doesn't matter what gender they are. I have criticised Andy Sutton, David Pugh, Ian Stevens, Jonathan Bacon, David Pugh, and now Laura P.C. Wilcox. I'm consistent. And to accuse me of picking on a woman about is just nonsense. I'm an opposition councillor par excellence. And that's why I sit over here, unlike some people. However, can I just say, the leader said in her report earlier on that I think she's probably learned the lesson of this. She said that delegated decisions in future will return to the process we used to have, where there was an opportunity for scrutiny to call them in. We have not had that opportunity. We have still never had anything in writing in any leader's report. We've had no report to Cabinet. We've had no report to full council about this decision. I'm entirely relaxed about the non-disclosure agreement in many ways. The Tories did it. I understand that. Sometimes there are good reasons, sometimes there are not. But I'm a councillor. I'm a member of this councillor, and I do refuse to accept that I am lower capacity than some of the people in the Cabinet in this administration. When they're dealing with things for this Cabinet, they should be open and transparent. Something you lot promised last May, in May last year, and are consistently reneged on. In conclusion, I withdraw the motion, and I hope the leader will bear it in mind in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
Yeah, actually, I don't know whether anyone else picked up on this, but there was a typo and it said binding meditation. I would have liked to have done binding meditation because I think that would have been an easier, but it wasn't meditation, it was mediation. I have authority to grant delegated authority, as Councillor Brodie is aware, and I was granted such authority in February this year for mediation, not meditation, process to begin. This grant of delegated authority was not a key decision and did not need to appear on the forward plan, or so I am informed. I thank Councillor Brodie for this motion, as it gives me the opportunity to confirm that since May 2021, it feels like 1921, the Alliance has always been clear that it would be undertaking mediation, and this has been discussed at a number of council meetings, including those I listed earlier, corporate scrutiny, Cabinet and full council. That said, there are always opportunities to improve the way we do things. And as an administration, oh no, we don't shy away from them opportunities, oh no. Corporate Scrutiny Committee last week requested expressly provided with a list of future delegated decisions. I really welcome this, and I actually wonder why it's never been done before, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I know the matter's been withdrawn, but it seems we're being permitted a little bit of comment, and I was named by Jeff just then, and rightly so. I welcomed his actions and comments when I was leader, and I just wanted to say, as a former leader and also former chair of scrutiny, I'm pleased that this has been brought out and highlighted because I had a few years away from the council, and I do find myself surprised sometimes, or have found myself quite surprised in the last year or so at some of the changes in terms of what members are told about and how they're told about them that have occurred during that time. I'm sure I recall that delegated decisions were actively publicised, and made known. And certainly I seem to recall when I was chair of scrutiny, brought to scrutiny so they could be debated. And something has gone awry in recent years. So I think it is good that we have this point brought up. Thank you, Jeff. And that situation can be corrected, or will be corrected, is being corrected. I just want to say thank you for that. And I hope we do not end up with this situation where delegated decisions are perceived as being taken behind closed doors for improper reasons. Yes, there are decisions that happen behind closed doors for proper reasons, but they should be noted and recorded, and where possible, and proper scrutiny takes place. So I think this is a good thing we've achieved here.
30 seconds, Councillor Mosdale.
So my 30-second question is, okay, so it's delegated and I understand that, but I have to declare everything of my accounts in my business. Where, if you've either got a packet of crisps, you know, in return for the floating bridge, or 3 million quid, where are you going to stick it in the accounts? Because you've got to show it somewhere, or you're going to stick it in the Cayman Islands. Just don't understand it. Because some point, someone's got to say how much money is, because if it's a lot of money, I have no idea where you're going to put it in the accounts. Thank you.
I think it'll get swallowed up with the cost of living. But Cllr Brodie, thank you for your badges of honour that you have doled out. And we've got about 8 seconds. Members' questions. 8 seconds. Councillor Pitcher. Sorry, the meeting's over.